Hi, everyone. This is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology, and these are your sun and rising sign horoscopes for the month of October 2020. In this video, we're going to take a look at the water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. So, true to form in 2020, we have another pretty powerful month. I feel like, you could say that probably for about half of the months of 2020, that maybe half of them have been like very intense. And in 10 years of doing astrology and of course doing daily horoscopes for I think 7 or 8 of those 10 years, um, yeah, there's few years that I remember that have been like 2020. And I think probably everyone can agree with that. It's just been a heck of a year. The month gets going. If you're Cancer rising, let's dive in. The month gets started right away. Oh, you know what? I'm on 31st. Let's back up. And let's push this forward to October 1st. And let's get Cancer on the, sorry guys, Cancer on the ascendant. Okay, here we go. So you've got a full moon in Aries at the start of the month in your 10th house if you are a Cancer rising. This pits the transits of Mars against the sun in Libra throughout the month. Including a full moon in Aries at the start of the month, and eventually a new moon in Libra later on in the month against one another. And we're seeing a big 10th house, 4th house dynamic for you if you are indeed the Cancer rising or Cancer sun. So here's what it looks like. You've got the full moon in Aries right at the start of the month, and then by the 13th of the month, you're going to see the sun and Mars get into a square with each other, or excuse me, an opposition with each other. So here's Mars and the sun opposing one another. And then just a few days after that, on the 16th, you're going to see the new moon in Libra in the 4th house. So what does that mean? Well, first of all, it means that there is something happening right now for you if you're a Cancer rising between work in the world and obligations or responsibilities on the home front. You are looking to create some kind of harmony or feeling of agreement or closure or resolution, peace, etc., around the topics of home and family. But there's also a really a lot of tension pulling in the direction of your work in the world right now. For example, my wife is a Cancer rising, and we're in the midst of selling our house back in Maryland. And she's also looking for we're looking for the right childcare help here in Minnesota. And, so that she's being more held back from getting her work done because she's really invested in, getting the house on the market or dealing with the house sale back home, and then dealing with trying to find a sitter and having to cover more than she's used to with the kids. And, so that's the kind of chaos that would be very normal to see for a lot of Cancer risings this month. The demands at work, the demands out in the world, your responsibilities are in competition with things related to home, family, property, kids, children, domestic life. So watch for those two areas to be in quite a push and pull this month. Although the good news is that by the 16th, when the new moon comes in through Libra, you should be finding greater peace, balance, and harmony around the topic of family, children, the private sphere of life, including things related to family and home. So that's probably the most dynamic action of the month, is between your 10th and your 4th. But this is also being energized by a whole lot of energy coming out of the marriage house. So things happening with partners in business, or people that you have close relationship with, or your spouse. And it can be the conflict is coming up between what you want to do in the world and things that your spouse is doing. Or it can be that business partnerships are more challenging, or that there are obligations both in work, marriage, or intimate relationships, and in the private sphere of life like home, family, where you live, that are all really pulling on one another this month. And that's called a T-square. So you can see that these three areas, work, marriage, and home, or work, intimate partnerships or interpersonal relationships, and home, family, and private sphere of life are just, it's like a motor. And there's a lot of, or you could say it's like a fire, and that there's a couple of waves of gasoline being sort of thrown on it. For example, Mars retrograde will square Pluto from the 10th to the 7th. It's a very energizing transit, but could also entail, power struggles, or sudden changes, or sudden a sudden shift of direction that's happening. You could also see that the sun is going to oppose Mars, like we said, on October 13th. Then you got the new moon in Libra on the 16th, down in the 4th. So again, all 10th, 4th, 7th stuff. Then Mars squares Jupiter from 10th to the 7th on October 18th. And finally, that pretty much wraps it up for the month in terms of this T-square dynamic. One of the overall pieces of advice that I would give here, because Mars is so prominent in your chart right now, if you're a Cancer rising, is to be patient. The things that you want to do that you are likely going to be feeling constrained or confined by will pass, but it's going to be until about mid-November before you really start feeling like you're getting freed up to move forward in the way that you want to. So it's a long stretch of kind of like waiting and dealing with different areas of life that are all demanding attention. And the good thing is that if you've been waiting for peace or resolution around home and family issues, that should start to shape up by the middle of the month. But there'll still be pressures and obligations socially or at work or in relationships that'll be putting pressure on you and possibly frustrating you all the way until about mid-November. And then things will loosen up. Now, this is seek the meaning always. Try to figure out, why is this happening? What can I, if I'm being held back, then it's a good opportunity to ask why and what this moment or this season of time is asking of me. Because part of this is about also the surrender of your own will, and also the best compromises to make versus learning how to exercise your will in the midst of making intelligent compromises. In other words, there could be extremes that come up between surrendering too much of yourself or demanding too much for yourself this month, and you want to be trying to walk down the middle. All right, so there's a couple of other transits that come up this month that I think are going to be quite energetic. And the first one is on October 7th. You're also going to see an opposition from Mercury to Uranus in Taurus. Now, Mercury is then going to retrograde on the 14th of October, and then Mercury will also oppose Uranus on the 19th of October as well. What does that mean? Well, it is, first of all, Mercury-Uranus is usually about speaking something, saying something. I would look at this and go like this is one of those transits from the 5th to the 11th that could be about some kind of creative form of personal self-expression that's very different or unusual or eccentric. Or like a personal makeover. Or you could also say that there's going to be some kind of change with regard to your friends or your social life. And I would also wonder about things happening with your children and questions about, your children's education or the community that you want to raise them in, or questions about their friends or their behavior. But things around children could be a little erratic this month if you have them. Just a couple of little bumps where you're going to, kid could, especially the theme of rebelliousness or defiance could come up, or questions about originality versus conformity. Those are also things that play a big role in the month of October for you in general if you're a Cancer rising. And again, those dates are going to be Mercury opposite Uranus on the 7th, Mercury turning retrograde in Scorpio on the 5th on the 14th, and then Mercury opposing Uranus on the 19th. It's also like it could be a very interesting time. Like this is a fertile transit. If you're a Cancer rising, you want to be careful of getting potentially pregnant. So, that could be a little surprise, very Mercury opposite Uranus. So Mercury's in the 5th house of pregnancy in a fertile water sign right now. So there's a lot of fertility, and that could be creative though. It's a good time for things to grow. But it could also represent going back to the past. With a retrograde, this would be like, we were done having children, and then surprise, there's a Mercury retrograde in the 5th. All right. So last but not least, actually, there's two more. So Venus opposes Neptune across your 3rd and 9th house axis, and that is happening. Let's see. Uh, that's going to happen right about October 17th, and that constitutes a kind of mystical, romantic, imaginative slash intellectual dynamic. The third and the ninth house are places of learning, communication, teachers and teaching, writing and reading, higher learning and the higher mind. And so this Venus Neptune is very imaginative, romantic, artistic, mystical, Venusian, and feminine. So a really kind of, I like this one in terms of there being, I don't know if you're going to read a book of Rumi poetry. This Venus Neptune fits really well for you if you're a Cancer. But I would be careful also of, just potentially, like anything related to women's spirituality. Good. Falling in love with your guru, not good. Anything that would be about the intoxication or delusional stuff around groups of people or teachers or educational environments or religious environments. This is the kind of transit that could also point to some kind of sexual scandal in the clergy or something like that. So you do want to be a little bit careful of the tendency for Neptune Venus to present delusions, intoxication, and also the disillusionment, being sort of seeing things for what they are as opposed to what we thought they were. So those energies are, it's not very long. It's not very strong either. It's just about, around the 17th, you'll notice some of those themes come in for a minute. And then finally, there's a full moon in Taurus in your 11th house at the very end of the month on the 31st. And that in particular for you as a Cancer rising, this suggests to me, because remember this Taurus energy opposing the Scorpio energy, the sun is going to be opposed to Uranus and the full moon, right? And so there's some kind of breakthrough happening in your social life this month. It's going to take a while. It's like a transformed sense of who your community is or who your people are, or things that are changing relative to, how you see yourself in the world, who you consider your allies or friends to be. I think that there's going to be some changes there for you if you're a Cancer as well. I would say, like, for example, it's a kind of transit that says, I need to find people that free me up, that don't make me feel like I'm conforming as much. This is Uranus speaking, right? There needs to be some sense in which there's a change of pace or a change of direction in your life socially, so that you can, especially I think of getting rid of any kinds of routines or habits socially that make you feel confined or contrived. So that's what I'm looking at there. All right, so let's wind it back and do it again for Scorpio. So we're going to put Scorpio on the ascendant. Here we go. And we're going to wind it back to the beginning of the month and start all over again. So if you are a Scorpio, at the very beginning of the month, we're going to have first of all, the full moon in Aries at the very beginning of October on the 1st. That full moon is in your 6th house. And that full moon is also going to be, obviously it opposes the sun in Libra in your 12th house. And then we have this Libra-Aries dynamic, which is such a big part of October, playing out across your 6th and 12th house axis. Now watch what happens. If we take this forward to, say, the, let's say the 13th, you're going to see the sun in Libra in the 12th right here, opposing Mars in Aries in the 6th. And then just a couple of days later, you're going to see the new moon in Libra in the 12th. All right, so if you're a Scorpio rising, I'm going to be just honest with you and say that this is a challenging month when it comes to relationships. The reason for that is that, whenever you're dealing with the Libran 12th house situation, for Scorpios, it's an interesting way of thinking about it. If you think about it like this, like Scorpio is a very Mars-like person. You've got Mars as your planetary host, your planetary ruler. You got Mercury retrograde in your home sign this month with Mars ruling and Mars retrograde, right? So you've got this kind of this signature this month of introspection and of the potential to feel a little disempowered or like you're out of your element, or that there is some sense of frustration or even sickness or setbacks, and just the general feeling of like having to grind through something. If you're a Scorpio this month, that's there, unfortunately. Now, the likelihood that it has something to do with relationships, groups of people, an organization, friends, that something's changing at your job, that you're dealing with letdowns or disappointments in relationships, romantic relationships, or friendships, something like that is in the air this month. But you will be able to work through it, and probably there will be some form of healing available to you in your relationships, in the workplace, whatever the case might be, or even that if you have to cut ties with someone or something, that there's going to be a sense of relief having done so. And we can see that because you have, again, the Sun-Mars opposition across the 6th and the 12th, in the sign, in the sign of Sun in the sign of Venus, and of course Mars retrograde in its own sign, and then a new moon in the Venus-ruled sign of Libra, while Venus is in its fall in the 11th house of groups and friends. And Venus also is the ruler of your 7th house of marriage and relationships. So there is not all is well in paradise this month for Scorpios. You know what I mean? Like there's some stressful weather coming through when it comes to your, again, I would say relationships across the board could be challenging this month. And you may feel like you don't have any power to negotiate. You don't have any leverage. You don't have a leg to stand on. And so some forms of compromise are likely to happen that aren't exactly easy for you to swallow. And there could be a big element of distrust or of information or something coming to light or coming to the surface that makes you have to deeply reevaluate who you are, what you're doing, what relationships and people you can trust in your life. And I say this because remember that Mercury is also turning retrograde by the 14th in Scorpio in your home sign, with Mars, the dispositor, facing all these conflicts with the Libran energy in the 12th. How have I undermined myself? How have I set myself up for failure in the way that I relate to others? Am I being strategic in negotiating a better future? Am I making my own needs met? Or am I making my needs clear to the people around me? Am I making sure not to, no devil's bargains this month? If you're a Scorpio, be very careful of that, because you may feel like you're caught between a rock and a hard place. This is also being powered by a whole bunch of squares from, Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn in Capricorn in the 3rd house. So it's like a T-square energy all month long. And this place is going to have a big influence on your mind. And it's going to give you that kind of bottom line, hard, critical, practical mentality. With Mars feeling a little bit frustrated as your ruling planet in the 6th house, you could make decisions this month that aren't very smart for the future because you feel like you have no other option. You could get a little Machiavellian and ruthless, or others could be that way toward you. The best thing I can say is be patient. Try not to make massive decisions. Critical date in particular for things to potentially be very kind of explosive. Let me list them out for you. The full moon in Aries on the 1st. Mars retrograde square Pluto on the 9th. The Sun opposite Mars on the 13th. Mars square Jupiter on the 18th. So those dates in particular, I would be careful of. You might see things turning for the better by the 16th when there's a new moon in Libra. But again, even into November, if you're a Scorpio, Venus is going to be in your 12th house, and you just want to be careful that you're not being, what do I want to say? Like, don't get involved in things that are, it's like a political game. Don't play the game. Don't get in bed with the mafia. You know what I mean? Like, don't compromise your integrity for something that you feel, I could see what I'm trying to say without trying to sound too negative is that you could sell your soul a little bit this month. So you need to be really cautious of that. The new moon in Libra could present possibilities for harmony and peace with some degree of compromise. But only if you have leveled with yourself, learned the lesson, and are making the smart choice to turn things around. anything else, you're trying to make a decision to manage or deal with something, and it's like a devil's bargain. There's no real good choice. My advice would be to just wait. Wait a little bit if you can, and try to let the Mercury retrograde play out a little bit more. Now, there's some really, my sense is that this is also going to be very dynamic in terms of things happening in your relationships, because all month long, in 2 moments, Mercury retrograde in the first house in Scorpio, your home sign, is opposing Uranus in the house of marriage and relationships. So it's kind of that sudden outbursts, or the need for greater freedom or independence, or to be free of something or someone, or for there to be unpredictable or erratic changes in your relationships this month on those particular dates. The 7th, when Mercury opposes Uranus, the 14th, when Mercury turns retrograde in Scorpio, and then the 19th, when Mercury once again opposes Uranus through its retrogradation. Those are moments that they have this kind of sudden erratic quality, and could reveal or disclose things, or in relationships that you didn't know were there, or could be a part of this ongoing theme this month of kind of trying to break free from things that aren't healthy for you, but then maybe you need someone or something around and you can't quite get rid of them, even though you know you should. Those are the kinds of dynamics. Not an easy month for Scorpios. I find it that's hardest to talk about. I don't want to freak all my Scorpios out so that you get paranoid either. I think you're going to be fine this month, obviously. But even you can see it, like, even if you go to like the 17th, on the 17th, here's Venus opposite Neptune, fallen Venus in your house of friends opposite Neptune, the potential for some level of deception or betrayal. For example, I've seen this. Let me just tell you a story that fits from an anonymous story from a client practice. I have a client who this setup is probably leading to them discovering that their partner, who claims to have become sober, is probably drinking again, and then this isn't a situation where this person can easily get out of the relationship, right? They're not going to be able to, because of finances, because of money, for example, I can't get out, or because we have kids together, I can't get out. But it turns out you've been lying and you're drinking again, right? That's of course not going to happen for me. Obviously, like, hopefully that doesn't happen to you. Hopefully that these energies express themselves in a different way. But how are you dealing with learning about who people are and who you are this month, when things are revealed or exposed that were hidden? I think that's a very big deal for Scorpios this month. So, all right. Now, finally, the full moon in Taurus on the 31st suggests to me that some breakthrough, some moment of greater liberation is going to happen in your relationships by the end of the month. That whatever is being disclosed to you throughout the month, some degree of freedom and feeling relieved from built-up tension or pressure is going to happen, even if it's a little heavy or difficult along the way, because you've got the sun opposing Uranus with the full moon in Taurus conjoined with Uranus by the 31st. That should give you this feeling of like, now that's done. Or even if it's a little bit difficult, what's that saying? If it stays, if it stays, it was meant to be. Or if you let it go, let something go, and if it comes back, it was meant to be. Kind of like that. Like, that might be good advice for you if you're a Scorpio this month. All right, let's wind it back and do it over again for our Pisces rising. So we'll go back to the beginning of the month. We're going to put Pisces on the ascendant. Okay, here we go. All right, so if you are a Pisces rising, the energy is across your 2nd, 8th, and 11th houses this month. Big T-square energy across these 3 houses. Again, probably one of the most dynamic series of transits that we have in the entire year of 2020. I would put it right up there with the beginning of the year. We had the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. It's a really big month with Mars retrograde, full moon in Aries to start the month in your financial house. And then you're going to have a series of pretty big transits from the sun. Watch how they unfold. So actually, I'll include the 11th house stellium in Capricorn too. If you go forward to, let's get my Pisces back there. Okay. So if you go forward to, say, the 7th, or actually go to the 9th of the month, you're going to see Mars in your 2nd house squaring Pluto in the 11th. And then if you go forward to the 13th, you are going to see the sun in the 8th opposite Mars in the 2nd. And let's see if I can make this a little cleaner. Here we go. Here we go. And here we go. So these are the 3 places that are all activating each other all month long. You see the sun opposite Mars on October 13th. You're going to see the new moon in Libra on the 16th in the 8th house. You're going to see Mars square Jupiter in the 11th house from the 2nd to the 11th on the 19th. So that's a lot of energy pouring through with Mars retrograde in your 2nd house. The focal point, if you're a Pisces, is your 2nd house this month. The topic of money, finances, resources, the things you own or possess, income and investments, expenditures and bills. These are the kinds of topics that are front and center this month. There may be a temporary feeling of not being able to do or do what you want or get the results that you're looking for. A little bit of a theme of frustration or limitation, maybe due to things that you feel obligated to with other people. That comes up through both the 11th and the 8th houses, which tie us into groups of people and other people who we owe something to, or we may be indebted to or obligated to in some way that we share something with. So the feeling of I can't quite do it on my own, I'm indebted or obligated to other people. It could also be a great month for finding allies and support from other people, but it may not allow you to do everything that you want to do personally. So I would be mindful of that this month and know that compromise is probably the best way to get through things. The other thing that I would look to is the potential for some form of financial liberation or a different financial approach or strategy, or if you're going through a period of hardship, by the end of this, I would imagine that some resources or forms of support would manifest to help you turn things around. I say that because, again, although there's the kind of hardship of Mars in the 2nd house in Aries, new moon in Libra in the 8th house suggests a seed being planted around the resources and assets and help or support that comes from others. So something like that is growing, and I think that should start to appear by the end of October, when Venus also moves out of its fall in the 7th house and into its own domicile in the 8th house. This also may have something to do with sorting out for yourself which kind of people you want to be aligned with, which kind of people are worth taking a risk with, and which are not. For example, I know someone who this month, Pisces rising, is anticipating having to make a decision between whether to stay with a company or to take off with a few people from the company who are starting their own company. The new company has a lot of promise, a lot of talent, but it's very new and untested. Current company, not as exciting, not as much opportunity for growth, not as high of a ceiling, you could say, but it is time tested. Those kinds of decisions around your future, around who you want to spend time with, around who offers the best opportunities for growth, and what kinds of compromises you might have to make, or what kind of risks you should or shouldn't take. Those all come to mind for me this month if you're a Pisces. Now, there are a couple of other transits happening across your 3rd and 9th house this month, which are also very dynamic. For example, right around October 7th, Mercury in the 9th will oppose Uranus in the 3rd in Scorpio and Taurus. Mercury will then turn retrograde in your 9th house in Scorpio by the 14th, and then it will oppose Uranus again by the 19th. So here is Mercury turning retrograde. You can see the little RX appearing above Mercury in the 9th house or below it. And 9th house Mercury retrogrades are great when it comes to an exploration of faith and beliefs, a period of questioning or investigation, getting to the bottom of something. It can also be a moment of, I've seen a lot of people who develop a podcast or who buy new technological equipment or set up a home studio, recording studio, or something like that, where there's the need to communicate something in some kind of innovative means or method for doing it. I've seen people, get offers to star in some people do voiceover acting, or people try to get a gig in a TV show or something like that. The unexpected opportunities that pop up this month that give you a chance to say something, speak something, communicate something, perhaps creatively or artistically, I think that those are pretty good possibilities. It's also possible that the topic of ideology, politically, religiously, spiritually, and you know, um, especially in your relationships is coming up. We see Mercury is the ruler of your 7th house of relationships. Venus is in Mercury's sign right now in its fall in the 7th house, with Mercury retrograde and Mars' sign in the 9th. The potential for there to be a spirit of investigation at best, critical conflict at worst when it comes to ideas and beliefs in relationships. Also, the need to break free of limiting ideas or beliefs is also a theme, and some kind of exciting new topics or new course of study or something like that. People sometimes will start studying astrology when this kind of transit occurs across the 3rd and the 9th house. Now, on the 17th of the month, you've also got Venus opposing Neptune across the 1st and 7th house. This is an interesting little, very romantic transit that's coming across the 1st and 7th house of marriage. It's possible that you could not see things very clearly. This is a transit that sometimes coincides with people having affairs or sometimes falling in love with a mirage, and something that's not really real or that's very fleeting that you could get intoxicated by. So be careful of that. On the other hand, the theme of love, surrender, healing, forgiveness, understanding, and compassion, you could see become more prominent during this time, because the better side of Venus-Neptune tends to include those themes. Now, last but not least, at the very end of the month, you're going to see a full moon. Let's get it. There we go. Full moon in the 3rd in Taurus, exalted full moon in Taurus with Uranus opposite the sun in the 9th house. I would see this as a moment of intellectual or mental breakthrough. And I think that if you are feeling more mentally confined or restrained by something, or there's some aura of mental or intellectual, philosophical, or ideological conflict this month, that you're going to see this kind of breakthrough and real liberating energy by the very end of the month, so that you won't feel as weighed down by different kinds of mental, what do I want to call it? Mental strife. So, all right, that's what I've got. That is your month ahead for all of the water signs. I hope that that was interesting for you. I would love to hear your thoughts and comments, and share your stories as the month goes on. Of course, I do a monthly overview where I break down all the transits of the month. And of course, as the month goes on, I also unpack the transits one by one, and we take an in-depth look at each one. So that being said, don't forget that my new course, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic, is also coming up. We start on November 14th. There is need-based tuition for people who are needing some assistance, especially if you're struggling due to COVID. You can check that out on my website. There's also an early bird rate, save about $500 off. It's a year-long course in Hellenistic astrology. I just did a video promoting it where I sat down and talked with several of my students, and they talked about their experience in the program and how it's been for them learning and practicing astrology. So if you are someone that would love to learn more about astrology and want a really nice structured program, takes you through a whole year of intensive study into the ancient roots philosophically, methodologically, and then you get to see it all in practice. The last third of the course, we're actually practicing with live students. Then check it out. I think you'll like it. So you can check that out on my website, nightlightastrology.com. Email us if you have any questions, info@nightlightastrology.com. And I hope to see you soon. All right, take it easy, everyone. Bye.